Hi, welcome back to 345 Delta Foxtrot. My name is David Forgerson. Okay, today's topic is spray painting, and I'm going to divide this up into two different videos. The first one is equipment and tools, and the second one is going to be about how to set up a paint spray gun. This is going to be a long video, I'm pretty sure. I apologize for that. Let's just, I'm going to go as rapidly as possible. If I go too rapidly, leave a question in the comments. Okay, this video is divided into 6 parts. Part 1 is paint spray guns, Part 2 is air compressors, Part 3 is paint and primer, Part 4 is prep, Part 5 is respirator and personal protective equipment, and Part 6 is cleanup. This video is targeted, or my channel is targeted at building an airplane, and so this would be about spray painting as it pertains to building an airplane. However, the topic of spray painting is much more general than that. And if you got to this video via some other means, stick with it. I think you'll find this video is useful. I've watched a lot of the other YouTube videos about spray guns, spray painting, things like that, and in my opinion they're all very poor. The people making them, I guess, are professional painters. Now, the term professional might be a little bit questionable. They have lots of experience and they paint for a living, but I'm not sure they really understand what's going on and how spray guns work. So hopefully I'll be able to make a significantly better video than those, and you'll find it useful. Okay, Chapter 1 is paint spray guns. There's 2 basic types. The airless, which of course don't use an air compressor, and the pneumatic, which require an air compressor. This is an example of an airless paint sprayer. This one is sold by Home Depot. It would be a good choice if you're going to paint your house. It's designed for putting on lots of paint. It'll pump paint out of either a 1 or a 5-gallon can. It has a 50-foot hose, and you can extend that up to 150 feet, I believe. Because it compresses the paint a lot. It compresses the paint up to about 3,000 psi. And because the paint is highly compressed, it can use a small tip. And a typical tip size for something like this is 15 thousandths, which is 0.38 millimeters. And we'll see with the pneumatic paint sprayers, the tip size is going to be more like 1.5 millimeters, so about 4 times larger. But of course, the pneumatic ones work at a much lower pressure. The air pressure there is like 30 psi. These work well with thick paint, like latex. Thick paint does not work very well in a pneumatic spray gun. You can, of course, thin it down. And you can use a big tip, and you can get it to spray latex. But it isn't really designed for that. Now, one big disadvantage of something like this is it's kind of messy to clean up. The whole hose, that 50-foot hose, is full of paint. And when it's operating, it's full of paint at 3,000 PSI. And when you're all done, you're going to have to clean all that out. And so what you end up doing is pumping water through the paint. You know, you just circulate it through a big bucket of water. And for latex paint, it's not too big a deal. You know, it's water-based, it's fairly easy cleanup, and it's fairly inexpensive. Now, with aircraft primer at $200 a gallon, you really don't want to fill up a 50-foot hose with primer and then just have to pump it out and throw it away. So, you know, this is not really appropriate for spraying primer on an airplane. Okay, pneumatic paint spray guns come in different varieties. The three primary ones are listed here. Number one is an HVLP, and that stands for high volume, low pressure. And the high volume is referring to how much air it uses. And so high volume means large air compressor. Then the second type is the low volume, low pressure, or LVLP. And you can use a much smaller air compressor with those. And then there's the HTE, high transfer efficiency. So what the heck is transfer efficiency? It is the amount of paint that ends up on whatever you're painting divided by the amount of paint that you started with, the amount of paint that you sprayed out. And in my opinion, this is just a marketing hype term. And the transfer efficiency has virtually nothing to do with your spray gun. It has to do with how much you miss, how much you spray on something other than whatever you're trying to coat. And it has to do with how much solvent evaporates from the paint or primer or whatever you're spraying. And probably has very little to do with the spray gun itself. Now, I believe that people don't like marketing their spray gun as low volume, low pressure. It sounds like it's inferior in some way. And so they try and market it as something that's the gun is high in something. And they made up this high transfer efficiency thing. But if you're looking for an LVLP spray gun, and one good place to look might be for the ones that are marketed as HTE spray guns. Now, not all HTE spray guns are LVLP, but it is a reasonable place to look for an LVLP spray gun. Okay, this is an example of an HVLP spray gun. This one is sold by Harbor Freight. It's kind of a professional style spray gun. It uses lots of air. It uses 12.4 CFM at 28 PSI, according to the specs. I don't have one of these. And the reason professionals like it is it gives a wide pattern. It gives you a 12-inch wide pattern, 12 inches tall, 2.5 or 2.25 inches wide, at a distance of only 6 inches. So if you increase that distance to 8 inches, you're going to get an even wider pattern. So, you know, if you paint for a living, you're going to want a nice wide pattern so that you can paint a car or whatever you're painting as rapidly as possible. Now, the downside is that it requires a lot of air, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the air compressor section. But a gun like this is going to take a a very large air compressor. Okay, this is an example of a gun that's marketed as HTE, high transfer efficiency. And it can use virtually any size air compressor. I think it's just a marketing term. This particular one is kind of in the middle. It's not really an HVLP and it's not really an LVLP. It uses about 10 CFM at 35 PSI, which is less than that HVLP gun that we just looked at. And it has a somewhat smaller pattern. Instead of being about 12 inches, it's more like 9 inches. And this is at 8 inches distance. So, you know, you're having to make trade-offs here. You have lower airflow, but you have a smaller pattern. Okay, this is the spray gun that I have. Actually, I have more than one, but this is the one that I use the most. And it's an LVLP spray gun. It's an R500. And I don't know the details, but I believe that these R500 spray guns are made by one large factory somewhere in China, and then they're marketed by a lot of little mom and pop outfits. And this particular one that's shown on the right here is marketed by Daqin Yang, or I have no idea how you pronounce that, but something like that. And I don't think it really matters, the Daqin Yang part. I believe that all the R500s are coming out of the same factory. Now, this particular kit comes with 4 different spray nozzles or tips, 1.3, 1.5, 1.7, and 2.0. And there's various kits. The kit that I bought only came with 1.3, 1.5, and 1.7. Or you can just get the spray gun with one tip. Of course, it's less expensive that way. However, I do recommend that you either buy all the tips that you think you're going to use as part of a kit, or you make sure that you can buy them in the future. Unless you just absolutely know what tip size you're going to use and not change it. But I recommend that you buy several different tip sizes so you have some flexibility. And we're going to talk more about tip size later and also in the next video. The cup on this spray gun only holds 600 cc. That's cubic centimeters, of course, which is a little more than half a quart. So if you were trying to paint your house with a spray gun like this, it would be very painful. And this is not designed for something like that. You want one of the spray guns, you know, that it's airless, pressurizes the paint. This particular spray gun has a pattern width of, it says 7 to 11 inches. I mean, call it 8 inches or something in that ballpark. We're going to talk about that more in the second video, at a distance of about 8 inches. So I have nothing really for or against these R500 spray guns. They seem okay. And I think they are fairly suitable for, you know, home use for a small air compressor. Okay, this is a picture of an R500, of my R500 spray gun. And there are 3 knobs, fan, flow, and air. Now, typically what you do is you set the air knob for full open, and then you attach an air regulator, as shown in the picture here. And you adjust the amount of air to the gun using the regulator. And I recommend doing it that way, and I believe most everybody that does much spray painting does it that way. An air regulator is not that expensive. You can get a cheap one for $7 or $8 at Harbor Freight. And of course you can get, you know, better ones that are more expensive, but probably all you need is a cheap one for something like this. Okay, the trigger is basically on-off. Not quite. If you pull the trigger just a little bit, just air comes out. And what that allows you to do is set your air pressure with airflow. You definitely want to set your air pressure, you know, when there's air flowing. That's, you know, the pressure when it's actually in use. The pressure will be higher than that, you know, when nothing is flowing. Like I said, the trigger has kind of 2 states. One, if you pull it a little bit, it's just airflow. And then if you pull it all the way, the paint starts coming out. And you cannot really, you know, pull the trigger halfway to reduce the amount of paint coming out. Don't even try it. I mean, it's basically, you know, you pull the trigger all the way, or you pull the trigger none of the way. And the way that you adjust the flow, the amount of paint coming out, is with the flow knob shown in the picture here. And all that is a stop for how far you can pull the trigger. So, you know, instead of trying to pull the trigger halfway, you just turn the stop, the flow knob, you know, close it off, turn it clockwise, and that'll reduce the flow. That'll reduce how far you can pull the trigger. And then the fan adjusts the spray pattern. The paint comes out a nozzle, which is just a hole. So the paint is going to come out in a circular pattern unless you do something, you know, to change that. And I'll show you in the next slide how that works. Okay, this is a close-up of the nozzle. The paint comes out the center, and it's adjusted by the flow knob. And the tip size, the one that's in when I took this picture, is 1.5 millimeters. And then the air for the fan comes out the 6 holes around the nozzle, around the edge of the nozzle, and you can only see 4 in the picture here, but there's 2 back behind that you can't really see. And then the air for the nozzle, I'm sorry, the air for the fan is coming out, you know, the 6 holes in the top picture around the edge of the nozzle. And then there's a cap, and the cap is what shapes the the air into the right pattern, and you know, the paint comes out in a cone shaped, and then the fan air comes out from the sides and blows that cone into a, you know, a pattern that's like 8 inches vertically and 2 inches wide. And so that's how, you know, a spray gun basically works, is by blowing the cone into the shape that you want it, by adjusting the fan control and the airflow coming out those holes on the side. Okay, the cup goes on top, and that's what actually holds the paint. And it comes with a cup, but I recommend that you use one of the new disposable cups. Okay, these cups here are made by 3M, and it's their TPS 2.0 spray gun cups. And they're the latest and greatest. They're also the most expensive. They're about $2.40 a piece. And the 2.0 means these are version 2. This is version 1, and you can get these a little bit cheaper now. They're $2 a piece. And all of these work great. I highly recommend them. Now, this is the cheap Chinese version, which you can buy at Harbor Freight. And the starter kit, you get, well, the starter kit is shown here, the picture on the right. You get 5 for $15, so $3 a piece. But all you need is the refills, the liner, and the cap. And a refill kit, the liner and the cap is only 33 cents a piece. So that's pretty reasonably priced, and that's what I use, and that's what I recommend. They work well, they're convenient, they keep the amount of mess and cleanup down, and they're not all that expensive. Now, the 3M ones, those are a little bit more expensive, but I guess if these didn't exist, the Harbor Freight version didn't exist, then I would use the 3M version. It would probably be worth the $2. Okay, if you're going to use the Harbor Freight version, you're going to need this adapter. And they sell 3 different adapters for different styles of spray guns. And this is the one that you want for the R500 spray gun. And it's not very expensive. And at Harbor Freight, you can get all this stuff on sale. They're always having sales. Okay, that's pretty much it for the spray guns. Now let's talk about air compressors. And I'm going to divide them into 2 categories, large and small. And so what do I mean by large? By large, I mean it runs off of 230 volts. And by small, I mean that it runs off of 115 volts. So probably what most people watching this video are going to want is a small air compressor. If you're looking at buying a large air compressor, you probably know what you're doing, and you probably don't need my opinion on this stuff. Here's an example of a large air compressor. This one is sold by Home Depot. It's a Husky 60-gallon air compressor. It runs on 230 volts, uses 15 amps, one phase, and it produces 11.5 CFM. The S stands for standard cubic feet per minute at 90 psi, which is roughly enough to run that HVLP spray gun that we looked at before. It was somewhere around 12, I don't remember the exact number. Has a 3.7 horsepower motor, and it weighs about 200 pounds. I'm just showing you this so you know what a large air compressor is like. Like I said, I doubt that you're actually interested in buying one. Okay, this is the one that I have, and it's a small air compressor. It's sold by Lowe's. It's a Cobalt 26-gallon air compressor. Uses 115 volts at 12 amps and one phase. And it produces 4.5 CFM at 90 psi. So this is kind of on the large end of the small air compressors. There's lots of even smaller air compressors, you know, the small pancake 3-gallon air compressors and things like that. But, you know, this one, I wanted something a little bit bigger. And this is basically what it takes for that R500 spray gun. That R500 spray gun was using somewhere around 4 to 4.5 CFM. So, you know, there are ways to, you know, take a spray gun and turn the air down and still use it. And we'll talk about that more in the next video. But if you want to use your spray gun, you know, in the normal operating range, and you have an R500, you're going to want an air compressor somewhere in this ballpark. Now, it does have a big tank, and you know, if you're not holding the spray gun open, you know, continuously, when it's not open, it will give the compressor a chance to, you know, build up pressure again. But if you're going to be painting, you know, fairly continuously, then, you know, you got to have a big enough air compressor to supply your spray gun. One other thing that I'll mention is a lot of people now are advertising the sound level of their air compressors, and this one is advertised at 70 dB, and it is noisy, but it's not all that noisy. But it is a consideration unless you have a way to a place to put your air compressor remotely so that it's not actually in your shop. Okay, you want about 90 psi to your shop, and you want about 30 psi to your spray gun. And you can handle that any way you want. I recommend having more than one pressure regulator. Basically one for the shop and one for the spray gun. And like I said, you can get these pressure regulators for like $7 or $8, probably less. This particular one is a little bit higher quality one, and it's $22 at Harbor Freight. Okay, you're going to want clean, dry air. This is particularly true if you're not using water-based paint. You don't want any water in your air. I recommend some sort of filter. There are much more elaborate filters and ways for drying air, but something like this, it'll get you going, and it's not all that expensive. And of course it has a knob at the bottom here, so you can drain it. So in addition to just being a particulate filter, it does accumulate some water and can be drained. And you will accumulate water in your tank. I live in a fairly low humidity area. I live in the Los Angeles area, and it's basically desert. And even in this area, just after you've used your air compressor for a day or so and you drain it, a fair amount of water comes out the bottom of the tank. And you're supposed to drain the tank basically once a day or every time you use it. And the drain needs to be at the lowest point in the tank. And that means that the drain is going to be in the most inconvenient place possible. What you can do is you can get one of these little kits. It's a 90-degree elbow and about a foot or a foot and a half of high-pressure hose, and then a ball valve. And you screw the elbow into the bottom of the tank, and then this valve it'll still be on the floor, but at least it won't be under the middle of the tank, and you won't have to get down on your hands and knees to reach it. You can just bend down and open the valve and drain the tank. And it's certainly not necessary, but for $10 or $15, it's probably worth it. Yeah, it was to me anyway. Okay, that's it for air compressors. Let's talk about paint and primer. Okay, this is the primer that I use. It's made by Stewart Systems. It's called EkoPrime. It's an aircraft primer that is designed to prevent corrosion on aluminum. It's water-based, and that's nice for a couple of reasons. One is it's easier to clean up, and two, the alternative is basically an epoxy-based primer, and with epoxies are two-part primers, and so you mix up however much you think you need, and if you mix up too much, it goes in the trash. With water-based primer, if you put too much in your cup and you don't use it all, you can just pour it right back in the can and use it next time. If you want more details, you should watch my previous two videos. It was videos number 6 and 7 about primer for aluminum, corrosion prevention, and I did some experiments and to optimize the adhesion of this primer to aluminum. Okay, in part 2 of this video, I needed some sort of cheap paint in order to just spray on paper and look at the spray pattern. And this is the cheapest paint that Home Depot sells. I didn't need very much. I just bought a quart. And I had the guy at Home Depot tint it a dark red. And even so, it was way too thick. I had to dilute it down about 1 to 1, and maybe even more than that. I didn't keep track of how much water I was putting in, but I put in a lot. And so I already talked a little bit about nozzle size, and the biggest nozzle I had was 1.7, and that wasn't all that much bigger than the 1.5 that was already in the spray gun. So it didn't seem worthwhile to mess around with a different nozzle. So I just started diluting the paint down, and like I said, I had to dilute it a fair amount. So, you know, if you want to try and spray latex paint with a pneumatic spray gun, you're going to need a large tip, and or you're going to have to dilute it somehow. Now they do make solvents for diluting latex paint. I wouldn't really recommend water, but water will work since it's water-based paint. Okay, the correct way to have done this would have been to have used a viscosity cup, and an example is shown on the right here. And all it is a little cup with a hole in it, and you just dip it in the primer or the paint or whatever, and you get a stopwatch, and you time how long it takes for the cup to go from full to empty. And of course it just drains back in the container, so you're not using up a bunch of expensive primer when you're doing this. This is an item that you probably don't really need unless you're thinning your paint or primer or whatever on a regular basis, and you want to try and always thin it to exactly the same amount. And so something like this would allow you to be consistent. The other thing that it will allow you to do is if you're using a different paint or primer, it'll give you a good idea of what size nozzle would be appropriate for that. And this is an example for a Zahn viscosity cup, and it gives you the nozzle size in the left column here, and then the time that it takes to drain the viscosity cup is shown in the right column. So for a 1.5 millimeter spray tip, which is what I was using, I should have adjusted the thickness of the paint to have about a 20-second time to drain the cup. And if you just want some rough numbers, like for painting a car or something like that, spray the clear coat with a 1.3 millimeter nozzle or tip. Do the base coat in the primer with a 1.5 millimeter tip. And if you're trying to spray latex paint, use a 2 millimeter tip or maybe even larger. Okay, the primer that Stewart Systems sells, the EkoPrime, it settles out very quickly. With latex paint, if you stir it up very well on day 1, and then you come back to do some more painting on day 2 or even day 3, On day 2 and day 3, you probably don't have to do hardly any stirring at all. It's probably still all stirred up. That's not true with EkoPrime. It settles out very quickly, and it takes a lot of stirring to get it all mixed up again. So I recommend that you get some sort of automated way of stirring your paint. This is a stirrer sold by Home Depot. I have one of these. It works pretty well. I recommend it. You can just put it in a cordless drill, or you could probably even put it in an electric screwdriver, and just start off fairly slow, and okay, I like these a lot. Home Depot used to sell these plastic pour spout things for $1. And I see the price has gone up to $1.38 now. But you can, if you're using latex paint anyway, you can wash these and reuse them. So you could easily get 20 uses out of this, or 25 or more. So it's going to be just pennies a use. And it keeps the rim of your paint can very clean, so that when you go to put the lid back on, there isn't paint all around the edge that dries out and then flakes off and gets in the paint and makes a mess. You know, when I'm just doing painting around the house, this is what I use. If you want something a little bit better, you know, if you're using $200 a gallon primer and you want something a little bit better, you might consider something like what's shown here. It's a lid that kind of closes when it's not in use and has a pour spout. And there's even nicer versions of something like this that sell for around $30, $35 that include a handle and a crank and a paddle to stir the paint. So you can use you crank the handle and it stirs the paint up, and then you just pop the lid open and pour out however much you want. So before I go on, let me mention one other thing. I don't have a slide. I kind of forgot. And that is, it is that you should filter your paint. Filters are very inexpensive. Harbor Freight sells 2 different coarseness filters. I use the coarser ones. And the reason I just use the quartz filters is those cups, the 3M cups and the cheap ones sold by Harbor Freight, they have a filter built into the lid. And the filter built into the lid is actually a fairly fine mesh. And so it does all your fine filtering right before, you know, the paint goes into the spray gun, which is exactly what you want. So I just use a coarse filter to, if there's anything floating around in the can of paint, you know, just to make sure that doesn't end up in my spray gun somehow. But, you know, I'm kind of a belt-in suspenders type guy. I filter, you know, my primer twice. Once with just a, you know, little cone-shaped filter, the coarse filter, and then again with the lid and the spray cup. Okay, next topic is prep. Again, I recommend that you watch my previous 2 videos. it goes into, they go into a fair amount of detail on how I ended up with the prep process that I use and why I think that it's a good way to prep aluminum. I use a two-step process. Step one is super clean, and I tried a lot of different household cleaners, degreasers, and this is the one that I found works the best. It removes the Sharpie marks if you've written anything on any of your parts. It removes fingerprints, and there's a lot of, on the large skins that Vans sends you, there's printing from the factory that goes through the blue plastic, and it leaves red print on the skins, and this will remove that. I use a sponge with a Scotch-Brite side. It doesn't take a lot of rubbing in order to get this stuff off. Now the Vans plans say that the Sharpie marks will still be visible after you prime your parts. That is not true. That is only true if you do a crappy job of prep. I don't know why Vans didn't put a little more effort into their prep process. And I mean, not only will it improve the visual appearance, you know, get rid of your Sharpie marks, it improves the adhesion of the primer to the aluminum. You know, leaving marks on the inside of your parts is no big deal. In fact, it might be desirable. But adhesion is something that you definitely want. You don't want to be sacrificing adhesion. Okay, step two of my prep process is I use CLR, and I dilute it down about 1 part CLR and 3 parts water. And this is my substitute for the Stewart System's EkoEtch. The EkoEtch works just as well, or maybe very, very slightly better. But it is about $70 a quart, I think, or something like that. Whereas this is enough to make 4 gallons, and it's only $25. And this is a mild etchant, and I believe that what it's doing is it's removing the aluminum oxide surface layer, and that lets the primer stick to the aluminum much better, improves the adhesion. So what I do is I get 4 of these concrete mixing tubs, and I use the first one for cleaning the parts with super clean. And then I fill the second one with water, and I just take all the small parts and put them in the water until I'm ready to clean them with the CLR. So that's just a water rinse. And then the third tub has the diluted CLR mixture in it. And I clean them in that for about 3 minutes. And again, I just use a sponge with a Scotch-Brite on one side of the sponge. And I don't do a lot of rubbing. I just, you know, in 3 minutes you can't do all that much, and I just, you know, clean them up a little bit. And then the fourth tub is another water rinse. And so I just put the parts in there until I'm ready to dry them off. And these are not that expensive. They're pretty reasonable size. you're going to need some table space if you're going to use 4 of these. So these are 28 inches by 20 inches, and then they're 6 inches deep, and they hold up to 10 gallons. And I only fill them with about 4 or 5 gallons. With water, it's probably 5 to 6 gallons. But with the CLR, you know, it's about 4 gallons. Okay, Harbor Freight sells this spray gun stand, and it doesn't really work all that well if you're using the adapter and the disposable cups. However, it does work a little bit. And you don't need this top part with the filter if you're using the disposable cups. The only reason I've included it here is you might want to think about what you're going to do with your spray gun between coats. You know, you're probably going to do your first coat, flip your parts over, well, wait 15, 20 minutes, flip your parts over and do the second coat. So, you know, you can just set the spray gun down on a piece of cardboard or something, or you can make a little hook for it or whatever, or you can use something like this. Unfortunately, I can't really recommend this if you're using the disposable cups. Harbor Freight sells these tarps, and you can get them on, almost always get them on sale. They almost are always having a sale on tarps. And like this one right here is less than $2, and it's 5.5 feet by 7.5 feet. So I recommend getting several of these and using them for covering anything that you don't want to get paint on. If you're painting in your garage, cover your garage door, cover all your equipment, cover your drill press, cover your cabinets, cover whatever. You can, you know, set up some hooks or whatever. You know, these have these little grommets, and so if you set up some hooks the first time you paint, the next time you can put these tarps back up, you know, very quickly and very easily. And basically what you're doing is you're making yourself a little paint booth. And so not only will it keep the stuff in your garage or your shop clean, it'll help to keep the parts that you're spraying clean, keep any dirt, leaves, or anything else that's in your garage from getting on the parts. Okay, so there's other stuff that you might, that you definitely want to think about what you're going to use in terms of getting your parts ready to paint. One is, what are you going to put them on? A typical thing is to get some chicken wire or some wire mesh at Home Depot and make a little frame and set them on that. That's what I do, and it works pretty well. If you're going to set your parts just like on cardboard, I recommend that you get a bunch of popsicle sticks and prop up all your parts a little bit so they're not sitting directly on your cardboard. Another thing that I definitely recommend is that you come up with some way to hold your parts down. You're going to this is assuming you're spraying aircraft parts. You know, you're building a Vans kit and you're spraying aircraft parts. A lot of these are fairly small parts, and they're made out of aluminum, and they don't weigh much. So the air coming out of your spray gun is going to be coming out at about 30 psi. And if you're not careful, you're going to blow these small parts onto the floor, or you're going to flip them over or flip them onto another part or whatever. So try and come up with some way to hold them down. Use clothespins, get yourself some large paper clips, however you want to do it. But I recommend that you do think about it in advance and you do something. Also, in terms of prep, have at least half a roll of paper towels sitting at the ready, and have a 33-gallon trash can with a 33-gallon trash bag in it, so that any, the cups, anything that you're done with, stir sticks, anything else that you want to get rid of, just toss them in. You don't have to worry about, getting paint all over anything. Just goes in the plastic bag and gets thrown out with the trash. You're probably going to want to wear gloves, and that's partly, to protect your health, but it's also partly just to keep from getting paint all over yourself. And you might want to think about wearing a hazmat suit or a paint suit or whatever Amazon calls it when you go to order one. One thing that I found that I wasn't really expecting was I had set some parts actually on cardboard on the garage floor, and when I sprayed them, I ended up spraying my shoes. So I basically ruined a pair of shoes that way. So you definitely think about what you're going to wear when you're spraying paint. And if you're just planning on wearing old clothes, make sure that absolutely everything that you're wearing can be disposed of. Okay, actually some of what I just talked about probably belongs in this section, but this section is about respirators and personal protective equipment. I definitely recommend that you wear a respirator, a fairly decent one. This one is sold by 3M, and this is what I have. Seems to work pretty well. This is just the frame. In addition to this part, you're also going to need the filters for the respirator. And these are the filters that I use. You're going to want something for organic vapors to keep the paint solvents out of your lungs. And I already talked about gloves, hazmat suit, and shoe covers. Okay, the last topic is cleanup. I recommend you get something like this. It's pretty cheap, $5 for a set of brushes. The primer that I use is water-based, so I just clean everything in the kitchen sink, and it's pretty easy. If you're using epoxy-based primer, it's going to be more difficult. Let's see, you might want to give something like this a try. This is spray gun cleaner, and it's a 3M product, but it's sold by Harbor Freight. And I haven't used this, so I can't recommend it. one way or the other. But it's not all that expensive to try. And you want to try and keep your spray gun as clean as possible. If you don't, it's not, the quality of your spray painting is going to suffer. Okay, I talked about using the concrete mixing tubs and filling them with water for the rinse and with the CLR solution, and also one of them for the super clean. Now, for the water and the CLR solution, I recommend something like this, so that you definitely want it for the CLR solution. You just pump, you use a transfer pump like this, and you pump it into a 5-gallon jug. You know, you can just get it at Walmart, a water jug, and then you can reuse it. Now, I also recommend that if you filled those tubs with 6 gallons of water or more, that you be very careful when you go to dump them out, that you use something like this to pump them out, because you're likely to spill and make a big mess. So I like this transfer pump pretty well, and I recommend it. You can get it on sale for probably $10 or less. They also sell the siphons, and the siphons are very slow. They don't work very well. They are cheaper, but in my opinion, this is worth, you know, your $14. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like these videos, subscribe, give them a thumbs up, or leave a comment. All those things will tell the YouTube algorithm to recommend them to other people. I talked about a lot of different products in this video, and I'll put links for most of them, probably all of them, in the description. So there's going to be a lot of links for this video. And part 2 is going to be about how to set up your spray gun. A lot of this video was just kind of introductory material so that you know what's going on, kind of how a spray gun works, what the knobs are and all that. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about how to set all those knobs. And we're also going to talk about how much air you actually need, or how big of a compressor you actually need for your spray gun. So that's it. Thanks for watching.